big things you talked about was telling the truth to the American public. So when you look at this place, you look at Republicans and Democrats, what issues are they not telling the truth about to the American public?
When it comes to debt and deficit, we're not being honest. And we're equally not being honest when we weaponize fear. And as if somehow we're going to take away the benefits from our vulnerable or seniors. We're not. And taking and reforming these programs doesn't mean that we have to take those away. It never has and it never will. We can make decisions now, or we'll have to enact drastic draconian cuts later. And I want to make them now because it'll have less impact on those who are really most vulnerable.
We're talking about the big, beautiful bill in the House. You're very concerned about the debt and deficit. It's possible, some projections suggest this could add trillions and more to the debt, maybe up to $5 trillion and more to the debt. Could you stomach something like that?
The debt? No. Right, and nor do I think...
Or a bill that adds that much.
Yeah, I think not only myself, but a number of us in the Senate have been very clear, right? We have to reduce the deficit. And quite frankly, the numbers we're talking about are small fractions of what we really need to be taking a look at as a country.
But it's fair to say you want some serious changes to this House bill.
Yes, $2 trillion more per year. Right? We don't do that in Utah. It's not the way we run our government there. It's not the way we run our families. It's not the way we run our businesses.
Trump has taken a lot of controversial actions, some of which you may support, some of which maybe you don't support. You talk about speaking candidly to the American public. What of what he has done has caused you the most concern?
If we're not careful, we'll destroy small businesses with tariffs. And I understand you have to play the long game with President Trump and tariffs, and I'm not one to step in and outguess his negotiating style or technique. But I do think we have to be very, very careful with our small businesses, particularly when it comes to these tariffs. I think I've been very clear on where I feel about Ukraine and President Zelensky, and that Putin is not our friend. I've been very clear about that. But I think we should flip the coin, and maybe that's where you're going next. It's remarkable what's happened at the border. We saw an incredible inflation report a couple days ago. We're seeing some stability internationally that I credit President Trump with. And so there's clearly two sides to this.
Given the concerns with small businesses, should he pull back from the tariff policy?
Well, we've seen a huge pullback in a number of areas. I think,
but there's still across the board.
Yeah. I think what small businesses would ask for even more is consistency.
What about the possibility or the offer of a luxury jet that he may get from Qatar?
So I will just tell you my experience. As an elected official, I have found it is best to avoid even the very appearance of being in the bad place. And I can't speak for President Trump, but I can speak for me as personal experience. Being here in the Senate is we're judged very harshly when we step out of bounds. And I just know for me personally, after being here very, very long at all, I'm staying as far away from anything that even looks like it's improper.
So given that, do you think you should turn this down?
Well, I'm not sure he's going to call and ask me for my advice.
Hey, you can give it to him. You're a senator.
I can tell you how I feel about it.
Yeah. Among things I'm wondering if you have concerns about, there's also talk about potentially suspending habeas corpus. How do you feel about that?
Listen, as I understand it, this is something the administration would bring to Congress and we would have to accept. So first of all...
You don't think you could do this administratively?
I think, as I understand the Constitution, this comes to Congress, right? So, President, bring me your case. Make a case to me. But I will tell you, as I judge that case, I'm going to be thinking in my mind, what if this is a Democrat president coming after something that I think is important?
So if he does not come to Congress, you would have a problem with that?
I'm just going to say, as I understand my role in Congress, he should bring it to us.
You talked about how Congress, quote, outsources lawmaking to the executive branch. What about Elon Musk and DOGE, the way that they have shuttered federal agencies like USAID, cut programs without the consent of Congress?
Look, if you and I had an hour, we could talk about how Congress has abdicated our responsibility. And budgeting has opened the door for Elon Musk to come in because we haven't done our job. We should be doing this. We should be making these hard decisions.
But do you think that what they've done is okay, the way that DOGE has come in and Musk has come in and dealt with USAID, shuttered USAID in particular?
We need to cut. and I talked about over and over again, like we're spending $2 trillion. That doesn't mean we shouldn't have compassion. That doesn't mean when we're letting a federal employee go that we shouldn't be thoughtful about perhaps that's the worst day of their life. And I think that was one of the problems with DOGE, is it lacked what people saw as compassion and thoughtfulness. And I do think we need to make cuts, and I think DOGE has opened our eyes to some doors that are very problematic. But having run a business, having been mayor, I know this goes over a lot better if you have a dose of compassion when you're doing it.
In this age of politics, and your party, the party, very much the party of Trump, you occupy a unique space within that party. I'm wondering, is it possible to be independent in the GOP in this era of Trump?
Listen, I actually think we serve the president best when we do act and function more like a board of directors. And let me tell you what I mean by that. You wouldn't want a board of directors to rubber stamp the president of a company, right? We do our job best when we tell President Trump what we see, what we think, what we feel. We're another set of eyes for him and a set of hands. And I really think the best way to make President Trump successful is to let him know when we disagree. And
do you think he can accept that? I mean, people who have spoken out against him have been drummed out of the party.
Yeah, I think I think that's a stereotype, but I think you can also see in President Trump that he does respect people who, the right way, the right time, the right place. You know, if I send out a mean, nasty tweet, of course that's not received well.
Yeah.
But if I have a thoughtful conversation with the administration about how I see something, I hope and trust that he actually values that as somebody who wants to help him.
You talked about energy in your speech, the importance of clean energy. We don't hear that a lot from Republicans these days. There are provisions in the big beautiful bill to phase out these clean energy tax credits that are part of the Inflation Reduction Act. You wrote a letter, signed on to a letter raising concerns about going down this route. Could you support a bill that phases out these tax credits?
There are some provisions in the IRA that I feel like are actually Republican priorities. Carbon sequestration, nuclear. And so I've simply urged my fellow Republicans to be thoughtful and to not come in with a sledgehammer, but to come in with a scalpel.
Are you an environmentalist?
Well, I care deeply about leaving the earth better than I found it. How's that?
You talked about how you visited the African American Museum here on the mall. You said,
touching.
You said it, quote, reaffirmed something I deeply believe, that as long as bigotry, discrimination, unfair treatment still exists, we cannot claim to be united. But President Trump has signed an order that targets, quote, improper ideology at the Smithsonian, and this museum specifically was targeted. Do you agree with that approach?
The reality of it is we do need to focus on discrimination. We do need to focus on bigotry. And I think a reset is really important, where somebody's not a bad person if they don't know how to talk about this. And I think we really got to the point where you felt uncomfortable if you just didn't even know how to talk about this.